The transceiver theory of consciousness. Modern neuroscience typically assumes that consciousness, our awareness, sense of self, thoughts, and perceptions, is produced entirely by the brain. This materialist view suggests that if you break down the brain's chemistry and electrical activity, you'll eventually explain the mind. But despite incredible progress in brain science, one problem remains deeply unsolved: why and how subjective experience exists at all. This issue is famously called the hard problem of consciousness. While science can explain what happens in the brain during thought, emotion, or perception, it cannot explain why there is a conscious experience attached to those processes. Why doesn't all that brain activity occur in complete silence, with no awareness? The transceiver theory of consciousness offers a bold alternative. Instead of assuming that consciousness emerges from the brain, it proposes that consciousness is not created by the brain at all. It is non-physical and independent, and the brain serves as a kind of biological transceiver, an interface that allows consciousness to connect with and operate in the physical world. Consciousness is not a product of the brain. The transceiver theory begins with one central assumption: consciousness is fundamental and non-material. It is not made of matter or energy, and it does not depend on neurons to exist. Instead, consciousness uses the brain to navigate the physical world, just as a signal uses a radio to be heard. When the brain is healthy and functioning well, the signal of consciousness comes through clearly. When the brain is damaged or blocked, consciousness may still be present, but its ability to perceive or act through the body is impaired. This approach reframes the relationship between brain and mind. Rather than asking, how does the brain create consciousness, we ask, how does the brain transmit and limit consciousness? The brain as a filter and interface. A key element of the theory is that the brain doesn't just receive consciousness, it also filters it. Consciousness in its full state may be far broader and more complex than what we normally experience. The brain acts as a reducing valve, narrowing the flow of consciousness to a manageable, focused stream that allows us to survive and function in the material world. This filtering mechanism is practical. It blocks out overwhelming or unnecessary information. This concept has historical roots in the work of philosopher Henri Bergson and was echoed by Aldous Huxley, who described the brain as a filter that eliminates vast portions of consciousness to prevent sensory and mental overload. The filter model explains why altered states, such as deep meditation, psychedelic experiences, or near-death experiences, often lead to sensations of expanded awareness, timelessness, or non-local perception. When the filter weakens or shifts, more of consciousness may be experienced. Real-world evidence for consciousness without a full brain. Hydrocephalus and high function. One of the most striking challenges to the materialist view comes from cases of extreme hydrocephalus, where cerebrospinal fluid fills the brain's ventricles, compressing and sometimes nearly replacing brain tissue. A famous case reported by Dr. John Lorber involved a university student who had only 5 to 10% of normal brain volume, yet had a measured IQ over 120 and earned a degree in mathematics. Similar cases have been documented where individuals with greatly reduced brain matter still live normal lives. From a purely biological perspective, this should be impossible. If the brain generates consciousness, how can a person function with so little brain? From the transceiver perspective, these cases make more sense. The individual's consciousness is intact, and even a minimal amount of brain tissue may be sufficient for it to connect with and operate in the physical world. The brain is a tool, not the origin. Terminal lucidity in dementia and Alzheimer's. Another compelling phenomenon is terminal lucidity, a sudden return of mental clarity in individuals with severe cognitive decline, often occurring shortly before death. People with late-stage Alzheimer's disease, who have lost the ability to speak or recognize family, sometimes regain full awareness for a short period. They may speak clearly, express emotion, and interact meaningfully with loved ones. Materialist neuroscience struggles to explain this. Brain scans often show massive atrophy and damage that should make such behavior impossible. But under the transceiver theory, this sudden lucidity may reflect a temporary lifting of the brain's filtering function. As the body approaches death and brain function shifts or weakens, consciousness may come through more freely, resulting in a final moment of clear self-expression. Consciousness and the subconscious brain. In this framework, the brain is not in conflict with consciousness. It works alongside it. The subconscious brain handles most of the body's automatic functions: breathing, digestion, reflexes, emotion regulation, and even complex tasks like walking or facial recognition. It acts as a background system, keeping life running smoothly. Consciousness, meanwhile, is the observer, the decision-maker, and the experiencer. It can direct attention, question itself, reflect, and change course. The subconscious helps by collecting data and managing patterns, but consciousness retains the ability to observe and override. This cooperation explains how intuition works. Subconscious systems detect patterns and nudge consciousness toward certain thoughts or actions, but consciousness remains the higher-order guide. Memory. Consciousness versus brain storage. Memory provides another clue to the dual nature of consciousness and brain. Brain memory. This is the kind of memory science knows best. Stored information like facts, skills, sensory patterns, and emotional triggers. It's clearly connected to physical structures like the hippocampus and is vulnerable to injury, disease, or drugs. Consciousness-based memory. However, there are cases where memory seems to exist outside the brain. People report vivid life reviews during near-death experiences, even recalling forgotten or seemingly insignificant moments. In dreams or meditative states, forgotten memories or emotionally charged images may resurface in full detail. Terminal lucidity may involve access to long-term personal memory that was supposedly lost. This suggests that consciousness may have its own non-local memory system, separate from the brain's physical storage and death. Implications of the transceiver theory. This perspective carries far-reaching consequences for science, philosophy, and society. Artificial intelligence. AI systems may become extremely intelligent, but without connection to a non-material consciousness, they will never become truly aware. They can simulate behavior and mimic conversation, but they lack the subjective core that defines conscious beings. Near-death and out-of-body experiences. Reports of conscious experiences during cardiac arrest or clinical death gain credibility under this model. If the brain is not the source of consciousness, these experiences may reflect real perceptions of a non-physical self continuing to function even when brain activity ceases. Mental health and neurology. Viewing the brain as an interface rather than the source of mind shifts how we understand brain disorders. Diseases like Alzheimer's or schizophrenia may be seen not as destroying the self, but as disrupting the connection between the self and its physical interface. End-of-life ethics. If consciousness can persist beyond the brain, this raises new ethical questions about life support, coma, and end-of-life decisions. Consciousness may still be present in ways we don't fully understand. Conclusion. The transceiver theory of consciousness offers a simple but powerful shift in perspective. Consciousness is not generated by the brain, it is transmitted through it. This view answers the hard problem of consciousness by placing consciousness outside the scope of matter entirely. It aligns with observed anomalies like hydrocephalus, terminal lucidity, and near-death experiences that materialist science cannot easily explain. The brain is a tool, a filter, a partner, but it is not the core of who we are. Consciousness is the essence, the experiencer, the self. The transceiver theory invites us to take that self seriously, not just as a side effect of biology, but as a fundamental part of reality itself.